We come in as an advisory or a consulting business. We sell them the solution, we sell them the software, the hardware, then we do on-site training and we provide maintenance and support afterwards in order to sustain that solution and make sure that it remains effective.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 334. How can small drone companies use their experience to tap into larger business opportunities? For that question, we head to Johannesburg, South Africa, and speak with Rolf Schulb, founder of TerraCam. TerraCam is a drone services company founded in 2012 to satisfy the growing trend of remote sensing in industries such as mining, land surveying, construction, urban development, security, and agriculture. The company is one of the first operators of commercial drones in Africa. It started delivering drone services directly to customers. But today, TerraCam specializes in the integration of professional drone solutions for clients wanting to establish their own in-house drone capabilities. After the integration, clients can independently conduct on-demand aerial surveys, aerial photography, blast filming, mind maps, and much more. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Rolf talks about TerraCam and how it transitioned from a direct service provider to an integrator. But before we hear from Rolf, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have a great story on the use of drones that you'd like to share in a podcast, contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. So let's learn how a small drone services company transformed itself into a thriving consultant business with Rolf Schulb of TerraCam. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Rolf to introduce himself.
Okay, so my name's Rolf Schulb. I'm the managing director of TerraCam Pty Limited. We're a South African-based drone solutions provider, and we provide bespoke drone solutions to clients across the continent. And yeah, I'm grateful to be on the show.
Rolf, tell us about TerraCam. First of all, how long has the company been in business?
Okay, so we started in 2012. That's when we launched the company on the 4th of July, I think it was 2012. We've been in the business. We were probably one of the first commercial drone operators on the continent. So we've been in business for the last 9 years and growing strong as the years progress.
What type of services were you delivering?
Okay, so when we basically started, we did a lot of services. So we had 2 Sense-Fly EB drones, and we used those to kind of do services for mines, for quarries, for construction companies, for surveyors, because at that point in time, the commercial drone industry was still kind of getting up and running. So we basically found a little bit of a stranglehold and a little bit of a niche market in providing services that were previously done by manned aircraft. And that's basically how we got our teeth into the business.
How large of an operation was it when you started the company?
So it was basically just myself that started the business. And then we basically grew to about a team of 5 people. After that, we hired about 5 or 6 pilots that then flew for us for all the different types of jobs that we had across the country.
Where did you primarily operate?
So initially, we were focusing only on South Africa. That's kind of where the spawning ground was and where the main market was. The rest of Africa was still kind of untapped, but eventually we did migrate into the rest of Africa. And at this point in time, most of our business is actually generated abroad, outside of the country.
Is your business the same today as it was in 2012, or has it changed?
It's definitely changed. So the drone regulations have become more and more strict as time has progressed. So initially we started as a services business, and we, in a way, we had kind of carte blanche, and we could, like I said, do what we want. But I mean, we did it within the confines of reason. So we performed all the services safely. But the business has now changed to become an advisory business. So while before we were doing services, what we're doing now is we're actually advising enterprise clients on how to integrate drone solutions across their entire industry, basically. So if you look at a mine, for example, they've got drilling and blasting, they've got survey, they've got security, they've got various different disciplines. And we basically now provide drone solutions to those clients rather than providing the service. So we've moved away from drone as a service business to an advisory and a consulting business.
When did this transition happen?
It started about 3 or 4 years ago. We found that a lot of the mines, especially in West Africa and in the remote areas, they prefer to actually own the solution rather than contracting it out. And this was a requirement that kind of evolved over time, where we saw that the mines in these remote areas demanded to actually have the solution or the drones on site so that they can actually operate independently, on demand, ad hoc, as they wish, rather than constantly calling in a contractor and incurring significant mobilization fees and all of that. So that's kind of where we transitioned, and the strategy of the whole business changed towards that kind of philosophy.
How challenging was it to go from a service provider to the consulting business?
To be honest, I actually enjoyed doing that because as the regulations became more and more strict, if you import a drone into a country, you basically expose yourself to a whole host of issues. I mean, importation of drones, licenses, registration, importation of lithium polymer batteries. So the movement of drones between countries is becoming more and more difficult and has become more and more difficult over the years. So we actually found that if you provide a solution, then the mine becomes responsible for all the legislative issues that come afterwards. And it actually was a very easy transition for us to move to that direction. And we are one of the only solution providers that are actually doing that kind of work. Most drone companies are still focusing on drone as a service, and it's still a challenging scenario.
Are you still focused primarily on the mining industry?
Yes, most of our business is still in the mining sector. Initially, we started with survey drones, selling SenseFly drones. Now we've moved into various different disciplines. The most recent discipline that we're approaching now, and we're seeing a lot of appetite for that, is security drones. That has now become one of our mainstream or one of our biggest revenue streams is security drones. So drones that basically patrol the perimeter fence line, monitor illegal mining activities. That has now become something quite serious, especially in West Africa, where illegal mining and artisanal mining is basically rampant and uncontrolled. We're starting to sell more and more security drones into those regions.
Are you serving the same clients, or has it opened the door to a new client base?
It's the same clients, basically. So it's the same operation, but while previously we were only targeting survey and the mapping department, now we're starting to target different disciplines within the operation itself. So it's the same clientele, but it's now become a much broader, what can I say? We're selling to more clients within the operation itself, but it's still the same operation.
You mentioned illegal mining activities. What does that entail, and how are drones used?
It's basically trespassing. That's one of the things. And also, because commodity prices have increased significantly in the past few years, it's become more and more attractive for illegal miners to set up shop close to mining areas because they know that the resources are there. So some of the drones that we sell, they patrol the fence line on a continuous basis, and we can see the hot spots or the weak spots within the fence line. And we can also detect illegal mining camps. So just recently, in a mine up in Ghana, there was an illegal mining camp that was basically undetected for months, kind of located within the dense vegetation. The security personnel had been driving past there for weeks, literally. And we deployed a drone there. And, within hours, we immediately detected that there was a huge illegal mining camp that had been undetected for weeks. And we managed to secure several arrests of people that had been operating those camps. And the drone's definitely showing return on investment.
What type of sensors are used in these operations?
The security drones are using electro-optical sensors, so sensors that are fitted with daylight sensor and also thermal sensors. So the imaging sensors that can basically detect objects day and night. And they also have target tracking capabilities. So we can, hone on targets and track those targets. And the gimbal will basically focus on that object as the drone loiters overhead. And it can also move as the drone moves, so we can do various types of surveillance activities.
Walk us through what a typical engagement with a client might look like.
So what happens is, from our perspective, is we basically fulfill the need of the client. So they would come to us with a requirement, say, for example, security and surveillance, and say, listen, this is our fence line, and we'd like to have a solution that integrates into our control room environment. They generally have control rooms that are fitted with, hundreds and hundreds of CCTV cameras, but they don't have an eye in the sky perspective. So our approach is basically, we come in as an advisory or a consulting business. We sell them the solution, we sell them the software, the hardware, then we do on-site training, and we provide maintenance and support afterwards in order to sustain that solution and make sure that it remains effective.
Are there other services that you feel would be of value to mining companies that maybe they haven't really adopted yet?
There are 100% a lot of solutions that we can still provide to the clients. So the next solution that we are going to be pushing is this aeromagnetic surveys. So we're working with a drone company in China that's actually got the resellership for that brand for 10 African countries. And we're working hard in order to promote that product across the continent. And they've got a whole bunch of different applications like LiDAR surveys, aeromag surveys. So, mineral detection from an aerial perspective that used to only be done by manned aircraft. So there's a lot of services that we can still provide to the mines.
And that would help companies search for new mines.
Yes, exactly. And it's a service that we're still about to roll out. And it's 100% targeted toward finding new mineral resources, perhaps resources that haven't been discovered previously.
Is TerraCam still a 5-person operation, or did that change as well?
It has changed. So we basically downscaled our business. COVID also didn't help us at all, unfortunately, because a lot of our work is on site. So we travel to the client sites in order to do the integrations and the training. So we had to let a few people go, unfortunately. So we had to downscale the business a little bit. So it's just myself, an admin staff, and a pilot. And that's basically why we had some investors yesterday in order to kind of ramp up the businesses again and exploit all the additional opportunities that have come about.
How would you characterize the business climate for these types of services across the countries that you operate in Africa?
It's an interesting question. I think the appetite for technology is growing 100%. I mean, you're seeing a lot of medicinal drone delivery companies starting in Africa. Zipline, for example, has started to deploy a massive network of medicinal drone deliveries across the continent, starting with Rwanda and going into Ghana, etc. So there's a huge appetite for drone delivery specifically right now is a hot thing in Africa because the road infrastructure is just so terrible. And I think it's just going to keep growing. The atmosphere or the climate for drone adoption is massive on this continent.
Which countries have the most attractive regulatory policy?
Okay, so there are a couple of countries that are adopting it quite significantly, and those countries are like Rwanda. Rwanda is one of the leaders in drone adoption, and you'll find that Zipline has basically done a lot of work there already. Ghana is another country as well. Those are the major two countries that are basically adopting drones on a far more progressive approach rather than kind of putting red tape in place or over-regulating it.
Do those countries also have a strong economic base and a positive business climate?
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the biggest gold belts in Africa is in Ghana. Ghana is actually now one of the biggest gold producers in Africa. I think they actually overtook South Africa in terms of gold production. So there are mines running all the way from Takoradi to Obuasi. There's just gold mines, and the gold price has also increased significantly. So it's become more lucrative to do mining activities there. And a lot of the mines have started to reopen and re-engage and become more active.
So on the flip side, what are the regulatory barriers?
So in South Africa, initially when it started, it's like basically running a small little airline. You need an air service license. Your pilots need to be trained, fairly expensive course. They need to have medical certification. They need to have proficient English proficiency. It's basically like running a small little airline. In certain other African countries, it's a little bit more lenient. I don't know if it's because the regulations are just not what can I say, scrutinized as strictly. They do have regulations, but perhaps they're not scrutinized so strictly. And that's basically allowed the industry to become like much more adoptive or captive of the technology.
I've heard that in Africa, there are challenges flying drones because of birds. Is that true?
We had a lot of bird strikes in West Africa. A lot of drones have been taken down by birds of prey, depending on what size drone they are. So that's been one of the limitations of deploying drones, or at least smaller drones in West Africa, has been the bird strikes. But besides that, there aren't really any challenges in order to deploy the drones.
Now, these are large birds that think the drone is a smaller bird or prey.
Exactly. So it's kind of like you're in my airspace. I don't know what you are, but you look like a bird. And, they basically attack it. And we've had several drones that have gone missing because of birds attacking them.
Your expertise is in the mining arena, but are there other sectors where you feel the experience you've acquired can provide value?
The drone realms is endless. I mean, if you look at agriculture, for example, that is a massive market. I mean, the analysis of crops, the spraying of crops, that is absolutely huge. The inspection of infrastructure, power lines, pipelines, oil and gas, those are all industries that we will be starting to look at more closely as we go along. So we kind of focused initially on the low-hanging fruit, which was mining. And mining is obviously, they've got budget, they've got money, which is, obviously one of the things that's important for us is to generate a revenue stream that's consistent. But there's a lot of industries that we're still going to be approaching, and agriculture is probably going to be the next one.
And I imagine that after 9 years, you must have established a good working relationship with the various regulatory entities in Africa.
Absolutely. Whenever we engage clients, at least our existing clients, we do so with the preemption that, we can support them from a regulatory perspective as well. So we do have good connections with the regulators in those countries, and we assist our clients in order to become compliant and make sure their operations are above board and everybody is aware of what they're doing. So we write operations manuals, we help them write the standard operating procedures, and kind of also help them get drone insurance for drones that are very expensive, like the security drones are not cheap. So, we also help them get in touch with local insurance providers or local insurance brokers in order to make sure that that whole drone program is sustainable.
What have the past 9 years taught you about the industry?
Well, it's definitely taught me that it's a limitless industry. So it's basically the potential is unlimited. The only part that obviously always comes into play is not what you can do, but what you're allowed to do. So it is still fairly regulated industry. A lot of opportunities are not exploited due to regulatory restrictions. And it's becoming more difficult. Like we're having massive issues right now, for example, transporting lithium batteries between the countries. So we've got several orders in for clients in Africa, and we struggle to transport lithium batteries around. So as the years have progressed, we kind of saw the industry from being like kind of a carte blanche type scenario where the drone gets into the country and you could probably use an excuse that it's a model aircraft and you get by with that, to a scenario where if it looks like a drone, it's immediately classified as, it's going to kill you, or it's meant for malicious purposes. So we have seen that the people in Africa have become more cognizant of the fact that drones, are becoming more and more prevalent, but it's still got a bit of a sinister side to it, and there are still a lot of challenges to be overcome.
You need a logistics expert for sure.
Absolutely. And COVID didn't help at all, because a lot of the airlines are not operational anymore, like our national airlines, African Airways. They're not operating at the moment. So usually I would fly from Johannesburg straight to Accra. Now I need to use Ethiopian Airlines to fly via Addis Ababa through to Accra. So it's the whole logistic chain, the whole process has changed completely because of COVID. So a lot of the transportation of drones we need to now do via sea, which we never needed to do before. We always did everything via air freight. So it's become a bit more challenging, and let's see where things go going forward.
Well, based on that, how are things now in terms of responding to COVID and the logistics and servicing clients?
There are still 3 trips that I need to do this year, and they've been basically outstanding for several months. And they've been outstanding because I haven't been vaccinated yet. I had my first shot 3 weeks ago, and I need my second shot in order to apply for the visa. So the visa application states that you need to be fully vaccinated before you can actually apply for a visa. So that's kind of hampered things a little bit because, I can't actually physically travel to sites. And our country rolled out its vaccination program by age group. So initially it was the elderly that got vaccinated first, then obviously health workers. And the vaccinations for 35 years and older only opened about 4 weeks ago. And the vaccination for 30-year-olds have only opened like yesterday. So we're going through a vaccination phase that's taking much longer than it should. And it's kind of delaying things. So I basically can't get to site. So in order to mitigate that, what we did is we did a lot of remote trainings. So a lot of the drones that we sold during the pandemic, we kind of transitioned from on-site training to remote training. And that worked quite effectively for a lot of the mines. But some of the clients actually rejected it. They say, we don't want the remote training. We want you to come on site. Those are the clients that I still need to service this year. So I'm waiting for my second shot.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs in the drone industry?
There's a lot of lessons to be learned here. The industry has changed enormously, and it keeps changing. It's an extremely dynamic industry. There are a lot of role players in the business. So what I would kind of recommend is people to do a lot of research, a lot of homework. There are a lot of platforms, a lot of drone platforms that are out there that are not really reliable. And you can actually burn yourself or tarnish your reputation by deploying a drone solution that it becomes ineffective. So over the last 9 years, we've gone through a learning curve where we've started to identify which platform works, what type of platform works, what works for which client. And it's quite a dynamic situation where you need to kind of understand, you need to have a very technical, in-depth knowledge of how these things can become effective. So if there's anything that I can provide in terms of advice, is just do homework, a lot of research, and perhaps give me a call so I can help you guys out.
Rolf, what's next for TerraCam?
Okay, so we basically just locked in the distribution rights for one of China's largest VTOL producers. And we basically now setting up sub-distribution networks in those various countries that we have distribution rights for, and those are 10 countries. We're going to be trying to maximize on the utilization of that technology or those drone solutions in those territories. So that's going to be the next focus for TerraCam, and that's what we're pushing for mostly at this point.
And for my final question, Rolf, what message would you like to leave regarding the drone industry?
If there's anything I can say about the drone industry is I would like it to become a little less restrictive, a little bit more progressive, and a little bit more adoptive, rather than putting hurdles in place that can kind of hamper the progress of the development. I mean, if you look at in the States, I mean, Elon Musk and, Jeff Bezos, how those guys have been going into space, and Richard Branson, I mean, you can see that there's a huge movement towards technology and adoption of technology and robotics and whatnot. So the drone industry could actually be much further than it is right now. So if there's anything I could maybe add is that, the regulators need to work more closely with the industry players in order to, make sure that a lot of those scenarios can be adopted.
That's it for episode 334 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Rolf Schulb of TerraCam. I want to thank Rolf for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about TerraCam or want to connect with Rolf, check out the webpage at terracam.co.za. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research, and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.